Hey everyone, geophysicist Stefan Burns here. We have more space weather inbound as this very large coronal hole is going geoeffective. This emits a high-speed stream of solar wind out into space, the interplanetary zone, and that is going to connect to the Earth. Right now we are at the shock portion of that, known as a co-rotating interaction region, the high-density part ahead of this high-speed stream. So we've just had more than 24 hours of enhanced geomagnetic volatility from a combination of strong solar wind, likely enhanced from some sort of coronal mass ejection, and also the very leading edge of this co-rotating interaction region, this high-density zone of plasma in advance of this high-speed stream. And that also coincided basically with the full moon. We'll talk about some of the interesting electric circuit and plasma dynamics that may or may not exist as a result of the lunar phase, it being a full moon, the moon being a magnetotail, and more. Some interesting things that I've thought of recently as it relates to that. But in the background, right now, we have Jupiter soon to go Cazimi, because Jupiter's on the other side of the sun and it has now just appeared on our chronograph. Let's give that a look. So we have Jupiter Cazimi coming up, and this is traditionally seen as a pretty fortuitous thing. So you'll notice we have the sun here. It's blocked off by this occluding disk, so we can see the solar corona. We see the stars in the background. We actually see a nice coronal mass ejection there launched from the far side. But at the very end, you'll see Jupiter there push into view, and actually this display capture is set just a little bit off. So here you'll see Jupiter appearing very, very bright because it's on the far side of the sun, reflecting a lot of sunlight. And typically a Jupiter Cazimi is seen as a benevolent and fortuitous thing. It's a new start of the Jupiter cycle, which lasts about 1 year because the sun comes around. It's actually more about 13 months or so. But the sun comes around and the two meet every 12 to 13 months. And this is also coinciding exactly with the new moon, almost on the dot. So there's some interesting astrological archetypal energies with this Jupiter Cazimi that don't occur all that often. This is actually a once in a 12-year thing, and even then it could be even further out. So this is good news everyone. We have this wave coming in, the Jupiter wave coming in around June 24th, June 25th. Now that is during this time zone that I've identified where we have critical planetary geometry. We have a grand cross, which is a sign of tension. We also have a grand trine and a kite configuration. So all three of those working together, quite powerful. But just looking at what Jupiter's doing with the new moon soon to go in and conjunct the two of them, that is a very fortuitous energy. We'll talk about that in this video as well. But first and foremost, let us talk about this high-speed stream coming in. I just showed you the imagery, the 211 angstrom imagery of the sun. Just to quickly recap, if you're new to the channel, hello, I'm your host Stefan Burns, geophysicist, space weatherman, and more. And on this channel, we go over what's happening with the sun. We look at solar activity, solar flares, these explosions on the sun, but also other dynamics like coronal holes, the high-speed streams that they emit. We also examine just larger kind of trends in space weather. For example, as we're talking about Jupiter, there's something known as Jovian flux. We get an enhancement of relativistic ions from Jupiter every 13 months, which is interesting. Things like that. Also planetary resonances, planetary geometry. We discussed that on the channel. We even dip into the realm of astrology because in my own personal exploration of it, going in as a skeptic with a scientific mind, it has proven itself over and over and over. You just have to leave a little bit of your brain open to new ideas and not be completely closed off focus with blinders on. So we talk about that on the channel. We also look at what's happening with the Earth geologically, geophysically. That is my background. And then we also examine cosmic forces that bring all that together holistically, present videos almost daily. So that is what we do on the channel. Here we have a coronal hole. This is an area where basically the solar corona, the outermost atmosphere, has been vacuumed up and there's very low density to it, and the magnetic field stretches really far out into space, whereas normally it loops back in. You actually see some nice kind of coronal loops here on the eastern limb of the sun. You see them all over. We also have a really significant plasma filament here on the western limb that looks like it's about to launch, activating this critical planetary geometry, which we'll touch on in this live stream. That's going to send off towards Venus and Ceres, the dwarf planet asteroid belt, also Saturn and Neptune. Those are the two big players. Looks like it's about to blast off. But this is the 10th rotation of this coronal hole, so it's very, very large. Very, very large. It has diminished slightly, but the notable feature of this one is that it does get close to the equator here on the leading tip of it. This is the geoeffective position. Once this kind of high-speed stream is emanating from the coronal hole from here, that's when it'll generally connect to the Earth. But we also see this section there stretching equatorially. So that looks like it's going to be significant as it relates to space weather, the impact, and that is not yet in that geoeffective position. So we are starting to see some effects, it seems, from this coronal hole as it relates to the solar wind enhancement already today. But we are definitely not geoeffective with this portion yet, and that is the portion that looks more significant. So we've had, again, more than 24 hours of geomagnetic volatility already, and looks like we have more to come, plus some big sunspots. Actually, let's go right to the sunspots right now. I believe it's this video here. We've had kind of a pretty dramatic change in sunspots just over the past 24 hours. If we look at our numbers here, this is the estimated sunspot numbers for June, and then the finalized numbers for part of May. We're looking at the past 30 days. This is data provided by the Royal Observatory of Belgium. They have sunspot records going back to 1818. Fantastic resource. This is linked in the video description. I'll put that in after the live stream. But we see that we really bottomed out there in May. Our sunspot monthly count was just 79. Now we've been going up. We're back to 150. We've had sunspots rotate out. So you'll notice that these sunspots have rotated out. We're only measuring Earth-facing sunspots. So we've stayed at 150 even though some of these have started to rotate out. And that is because sunspot group 4114, or they're known as AR, and then the number, that's active region. So AR4144 there has just recently pushed out a bunch of solar flux, new solar flux. And I talked about that in the days prior to this live stream. So the past few days, maybe even like the past week or so, I've been talking about how if we're going to have some significant solar activity and or geomagnetic, geophysical activity here on Earth as it relates to this critical planetary geometry, which is what that's forecasted for, June 21st through the end of the month, we're going to need new flux to push out of the sun, because on the far side of the sun, we weren't really seeing anything notable. Well, here is that new flux pushing out right in between these existing sunspot groups. They're pretty minor before. Now it's looking pretty significant, and it's not yet Earth center and direct. So this still has this is Earth center right there. And in this zone right there, maybe it's about 3 days away. So in about 3 days time, it's going to be lined up. That'll be around June 17th, let's say. And that's certainly going to be after this coronal hole high-speed stream impact, which we can go back to right here. So that, and this portion should be lined up around that time frame. Well, actually a little bit sooner than that, obviously, because this is, closer to, well, this needs to go geoeffective. So yeah, it's going to be about the same time. This will be geoeffective as this one is right in that center zone. And that's important because this emits a high-speed stream. So the solar wind density will be very low and the velocity will be high. So effectively, there's not going to be much friction, you could say, in between us and the sun. So if that does decide to launch something significant, when it's Earth center direct, it's not going to have much holding it back. It's not going to encounter much friction. It's going to be able to speed through interplanetary space pretty quickly and impact the Earth without much loss of velocity. And you get these more significant impacts and storms, like geomagnetic storms, when the velocity is high. So that's just the fact that this high-speed stream can have a high velocity means that it can elevate geomagnetic activity, even if its magnetic field characteristics may not be the best. Well, this is going to be very conducive to that possibility of a solar storm traveling through the interplanetary medium very, very quickly. So keep that in mind. And then if that lines up June 17th, let's say, or maybe even June 18th, right? It can be a little bit beyond Earth center direct, still be very, very geoeffective. Then we put, let's say, 2 days, 3 days on that transit time. Hey, that's right on around that critical planetary geometry that I forecasted back on, first gave the forecast for on May 29th in one of my videos. So yeah, a lot of stuff happening. Let's check out this crazy plasma filament because it looks like it's about to go. This is really wild. We're looking at our past bit more than 48 hours here. So we'll see it really start to kind of like destabilize, and then we'll switch to our most recent 3 hours of footage because this does not show the most recent 3 hours, but it gets close. But look at just the size of this plasma filament and just how active it is. It hasn't launched yet, but a big, thick coil of plasma. Really, really interesting. So the plasma, there's a lot of different electric field dynamics that influence plasma, but you can get it to constrict down into these filaments like this. And you also see a lot of activity there. And that is right on the limb now. So if that launches out, it's going to go towards Saturn and Neptune, which are about to do their great historic conjunction. Let us look at our most recent imagery so we can see even the past 3 hours of that, because this is pretty wild too. And I'll have to zoom out a little bit for you, but we can get this going. And this is our past 3 hours of imagery here. So we see that guy going. And I mean, that is wild. If that, it's probably going to destabilize, almost certainly. We don't know, but it's probably going to destabilize. If that does, that's going to be a big coronal mass ejection launch out in space. Don't know if that will interact with us. It would have to have some sort of wavefront that propagates from here this way like that, right towards the Earth. But it's possible. It's not the most common thing, but it is possible. Let's look at a real-time solar wind to see what we've been going through for the past few days. Here we have our past 7 days of data, and we see a variety of things here. I'll explain what they are. This is our interplanetary magnetic field. Up top, there's two different measurements that they provide on this view. There's other ways to look at more in depth. Here we have our phi angle, which shows basically anytime there's like a sector crossing, they call it, with the solar wind, we can see that. Here we see our density of the solar wind, our speed or velocity, our temperature, and then our KP index of geomagnetic volatility. So if I go over here, there is that G2 storm that we've had for more than a day now, just now tapering off. For the past 9 hours, our KP index has been values of 3 and just slightly above 3 at 3.33. So we're finally out of the enhanced geomagnetic volatility that we had during the full moon. We're going to talk about that auroral circuit and the Kordylewski clouds next. But we see now that the solar wind velocity has finally gone up to about 520. That's not particularly impressive, but it is elevated, whereas before it was in the 400s, low 400s. Maybe even at times dropping, yeah, just barely below 400 there. And that was during the majority of this solar storm impact. So we see that our solar wind magnetic field strength, the black lines measuring the total field strength, that slowly ramped up. Took a long time to get all the way to its maximum here at about 17 nanotesla, which is more than 3 times stronger than normal. Normal strength is 5 nanotesla for the solar wind. We see the southward component went sharply negative. That's what gave us this storm. There was an interesting shock that hit Earth right at midnight universal time for 1 hour, going to 1 a.m. UTC, which is why this value there is a 6.33. Kind of unknown why we had that shock for that. And in general, there's some confusion amongst space weather forecasters here. Some people are saying, yeah, this is totally expected. Other people are, it's like we had some models made for a solar storm coming in around this time frame, but it was a little bit of a bizarre situation. And we did have something come in, but this doesn't really have the typical characteristics of a coronal mass ejection impact, which doesn't mean it's not one, but it's a little odd in the fact that it's just like a very slow, gradual ramp up. You don't see like a sudden jump in any of these metrics. It's just slowly coming in. Some people are saying this is the co-rotating interaction region, not a solar storm. NOAA is saying that this sector, this boundary crossing right there, indicates that we now have the co-rotating interaction region, that high density wall hit us, and this was the solar storm. That probably makes the most sense. If we do go to our ACE real-time solar wind, we can look at our EPAM data. And we see for our past 3 days, we did have this increase right there in our low energy protons, which would indicate some sort of coronal mass ejection approaching. Because what can happen is they form these double layers. It's a zone where you have a high positive charge, like a high negative charge next to each other really closely, creating a really strong electric field gradient. And any particle that passes through that can get accelerated really fast. So that's why you have this sudden acceleration of particles. And that's because as this solar storm or just whatever plasma structure, really, we can just think of it as a plasma structure is approaching the Earth. It's sweeping up and accelerating these particles to higher velocity. And so you get just normal particles, which are lower flux, to now enter into these zones, causing this increase. So that is the case there. I think this, if we go back to our real-time solar wind, I don't think this is the co-rotating interaction region, because if we look at this, this is June 13th, going up to the 14th, all universal time. And if we go again here to our 211 angstrom imagery, this is nowhere really near geoeffective on June 13th. I mean, this little bit is just starting to enter into it, but you're not getting the meat of a high-speed stream from that. You're going to get it from this zone right there. So either way, we had an enhancement in the solar wind, and now we have a new one coming from this high-speed stream. Some interesting dynamics played out with this most recent geomagnetic storm because of the full moon effect. I'm going to talk about that a little bit more. But before that, in the last live stream yesterday, I did discuss, I said, hey, now that the storm has hit, be mindful that there's a higher likelihood of us getting some magnitude 6 earthquakes. And well, we've had one now come in after that storm, whereas we've been in the past few days, we've only had magnitude 5s. So the timing is a little circumspect. Here's the 6.1 Kuril Islands. This is the island chain in between Kamchatka Peninsula and northern part of Japan. And so that's the biggest earthquake that we've had for the past 24 hours. That we also have had some activity along the mid-ocean ridges. So here we have our southern East Pacific rise off the west coast of South America there, actually at that triple junction. Pretty sure that's fairly close to Easter Island, which is right here. So there's Easter Island right there, and it's kind of close. That's to the south of it. And then we have also a earthquake that occurred on the Carlsberg Ridge, and this is another mid-ocean ridge right here near the Maldives. And so some activity along these ridges. I think also two earthquakes actually on the southern East Pacific rise right there. So that 6.1 though, by far the largest earthquake, and that occurred pretty quickly after that geomagnetic storm. And now with this new high-speed stream coming in, I would say we should expect more of these magnitude 6 plus earthquakes for the days ahead, because there's a pretty good connection between coronal hole high-speed streams and earthquakes. It's a little bit of a unknown connection as to why. I think it's plasma-based, but it's probably multifactorial in a variety of ways. But regardless, there is a good statistical connection between them. So we have that high-speed stream coming in, and therefore I would say earthquake activity should likely stay elevated for the next, I mean, it's a big coronal hole, so probably even like the next week or so. If we go back one more time, I mean, just look at that. It's a very wide coronal hole stretching across the sun. It has lost some size. It's the 10th rotation though, so keep that in mind. Let us now talk about these Kordylewski clouds, because these are really interesting. Hey everyone, geophysicist Stefan Burns here. There are some unusual features that surround our planet known as Kordylewski clouds, and they exist in the Lagrange points created by the Earth-Moon system. So we have the L5 point, the L4 point. This is based on the gravitational force. So Earth has a very strong gravitational field. The Moon also has one, but you have these zones where gravity effectively diminishes greatly. And they were first observed back in the 60s, I believe. I think it's 1967 by Kordylewski himself. And they're this very transient phenomena. They've only been observed a few times, but they're confirmed in 2018 by the Royal British Astronomical Society. They are filled with this complex dusty plasma, it's called, because you get a lot of dust in space, and dust will attract charge carriers like protons and electrons to it, and so as a result it will take on charge. And if there's a whole bunch of these dust grains, like not even billions, but uncountable number of these dust grains in space, they form these what are called dusty plasma clouds, which can have a variety of interesting electromagnetic effects. So we see that they are on each side of the moon, and we just had the full moon pass through the magnetotail during a solar storm impact. So we see that the light here is on the Earth, so the sun is over here, right? So this would mean that the magnetic field stretches behind the Earth, and the moon in that full moon position passes through. Well, we see that these clouds can either enter into that magnetotail zone before with the L4 cloud or after with the L5 cloud. I want to talk about auroral circuits really quick as it relates to Kordylewski clouds, because there's an interesting kind of idea that I've had. This is by no means guaranteed, but it's something interesting to think about. We know that there are these auroral circuits that exist, especially during more active storm conditions. So here we have the Earth, and then A right there, this is like the ionosphere, which is made up of plasma, 1% plasma. It's the upper atmosphere, which means it has conductivity to it and can host an electric current. Then we also have these electric currents created by the solar wind that go into the auroral zone. And we see here the thing that's helping connect the entire circuit together, because if you have a break in any of this electric current, then the circuit breaks, is we have this plasma cloud there. And for example, that could be any sort of plasma body within the magnetotail. And that could also be maybe a Kordylewski cloud, because that's also a plasma body. If it's able to host an electric current, then that could complete this circuit. Here we have a double layer, and a double layer is very simple. It's when you have a plasma with a very high positive charge next to a zone of plasma very close together with a very high negative charge, which creates a very strong electric field gradient. Here we see that. We see this is E for electric field. Here we see it goes down, and then it goes up. And this is like, this is across time, so this is something traveling through that double layer, giving us this profile. But this electric potential is very large. Across the entire circuit, it equalizes out, but in this very minor, narrow zone, it's a very powerful electric field gradient, which can accelerate particles. So if you have this circuit flowing and current, these particles flowing here, they hit that double layer, and they will then all of a sudden rain down into the Earth, and that can trigger aurora. And this is especially active like during substorms and such. But one of the things that we have found is that there's an increase in geomagnetic volatility. It's more likely to occur when the moon is in the full moon position. And here we see the magnetic field of the Earth, and we see the plasma contained in the magnetotail. And the moon is a large gravitationally rounded body. It's being hit by sunlight, so it develops a very powerful electric field gradient from its light side to its dark side, right? Positive charge here, negative charge there. That in and of itself is going to interact with the plasma magnetotail, perhaps amplify this auroral circuit. But we also have this data from 1874 to 1954 showing that geomagnetic disturbances are just in general more common during that full moon phase, and they're least common during the new moon, when the moon is completely out of the magnetic field, totally out. It's actually kind of in front of the Earth, shielding it from solar wind. So this is 80 years of data, definitely worth paying attention to as a result. And we even see that the highest occurrences of geomagnetic storms is right here, slightly after that full moon phase. And then we see it ramping up there. We do get a spike there before the first quarter moon, but in general, you have the highest amount of disturbance right here after that full moon phase. And well, if we go back here, we see the Kordylewski clouds. And so that would be roughly when one of these clouds is going to be in that magnetotail. Perhaps that is better able to complete this auroral circuit and therefore enhance any geomagnetic activity, because geomagnetic activity And the aurora, and therefore the magnetic field swings that register at the surface, is all based on these electric circuits. And so the stronger the electric circuit, the more flow there is, the more current there is, and therefore the stronger the magnetic field swings that are generated. So interesting side note I wanted to bring up about Kowalski clouds and the auroral circuit and how they may be connected together. We really don't know that much about these. There's some very interesting ideas floating around as it relates to the Kowalski clouds. You can read about that in A New Science of Heaven by Robert Temple. He speculates that these are highly conscious plasma entities. So you can look into that if you want. But regardless, just as it relates to the kind of electromagnetic dynamics of our near-Earth system, these may be bigger players than you may have otherwise realized. And our recent solar storm that we just had is evidence for that, because we have this solar storm right here that we just had, as we see with our real-time solar wind data. But it wasn't that, I mean, it was significant, but this is a pretty long duration, and perhaps the full moon, just subtly raised up that geomagnetic activity level a little bit more than would have been otherwise. Yeah, so very interesting stuff about Kowalski clouds. Wanted to share that with you. And I also want to talk about this Jupiter wave that we have coming in. So let's talk about the Jupiter wave, because this is the good news. Good news, everyone. We have the Jupiter wave coming in while everything else goes crazy. So here we have our Western Tropical Astrology chart set for June 25th for the new moon, or some people call it the dark moon, black moon. And this is at 10:31 a.m. Universal Time. We see here the sun, that's the symbol for the sun. We see the moon, they are together, that is a new moon, the two are conjunct. And we see Jupiter right there, 1 degree behind them. So we just had the Jupiter Cazimi after this full moon, after this new moon. Well, what's so interesting about this is once you learn the different connections between the planets and the significations and the archetypal energies, you can see that this is a very, and this aspect is very fortuitous. There are some other things which are a lot more tense in this chart. But Jupiter is traditionally exalted in Cancer. So, it's like lifted up. It does very well in Cancer, you could say. And this is because this is around solstice, and it's a sign of the moon, and Jupiter was seen as being in a very nice placement there, whereas it's not in exaltation in Capricorn. It doesn't like to be in Capricorn. That is where you have the other solstice, the winter solstice. The light is the dimmest, right? You have the least amount of light. With summer solstice, you have the most amount of light. This is for the northern hemisphere, and Jupiter resonates with these more benevolent and fortuitous and grandiose things. So it likes being in Jupiter. Well, the moon rules over, or likes being in Cancer. The moon rules over Cancer. So not only is Jupiter exalted in Cancer, it is also co-present with its ruler in domicile and conjunct the sun during that Cazimi. So that is a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful energy sequence. And just in general, before we get a little bit more into this, if you want to really learn a lot more about this specific Cancer new moon, then Pam Gregory has a great video that she dropped on that, and I'll link that in the video description. I often watch her videos. She watches mine, so I wanted to give her a shout out on the channel, but she does a great job breaking it down. She includes a lot of other points and bodies. This is a simple interpretation I'm giving you just for the sake of brevity, but she has a more in-depth one on her channel you can check out. But there are some other forces at play here as well. You'll notice that Uranus there is at the 29th degree, about to shift into Gemini, like about to do the shift that is really going to be a 7-year-long transit. It will go back into Taurus at the very end of the year, but basically this is the start of a new 7-year cycle for Uranus, and a big one at that. You'll notice that Mars here is now 4 degrees into Virgo, but if you go back just like a day or two, maybe like 3 days or so, it was right here at 29 degrees of Leo, and it's in this trine to, or sorry, not trine, it's in this square to Uranus, which is a hard aspect of like tension. So because this is fixed Earth, this is fixed fire, so the two are in square. They're both fixed signs. Well, right at this axis there is nowadays is where you have the fixed star Regulus, which is the ruler of Leo. And it's a star of royalty and kings, and you have this aggressive Mars there in a tight aspect to Uranus, which is associated with disruptions and change, and also like Earth events like earthquakes and geomagnetic storms and more in Taurus. So we have kind of an interesting signature there, especially if you think about like the world events currently unfolding. Just to like dip our pinky into it really quick and not go beyond that. This operation that Israel launched is called like Rising Lion, and we have this configuration. Basically, Mars is on Regulus, pretty close at this moment in time, and then it's going to have this tight square to Uranus in fixed Earth, and this looks like a pretty disruptive cycle. That point right there is right on the ascendant, effectively, of the President of the United States. And when they were last together, we had, with the Mars-Uranus conjunction on Algol in Taurus, that was when there was that assassination attempt. So this is like a continuation of that story. And we're already seeing some things happen right now, of course, with the terrible things happening in Iran and now Israel as well. Prayers to all the normal people affected by this. But this is coming to effect more around like the new moon, the 25th. We see that this aspect just kind of is still an orb here, but it's a couple days before this. So it looks like there's kind of like a benevolent new start after perhaps some sort of climax moment occurs right around that critical planetary geometry of the 21st of June. And if we do have enhanced solar activity and or geomagnetic activity, then keep in mind that there's a lot of research showing that enhanced solar activity and these geomagnetic field swings kind of make people go cuckoo. So in general, let's pull up this chart really quick. I wasn't planning on presenting this, but it's the perfect time to do so. Let's look at spontaneous social processes and solar activity. And we see, and basically it's a whole bunch of revolutions, okay? And we have our solar cycle, and these numbers up here, if they're high up, that's the solar maximum. If they're down here at the bottom near zero, because we're measuring sunspot numbers, that's solar minimum. Well, basically all the notable, like really big revolts and revolutions and things of this nature, they are clustered around solar maximum periods. So that is pretty interesting. And we are right now in solar cycle 25 maximum, and we have this buildup that's right now occurring in this clear escalation of aggression. So I wanted to point out the astrology because it's really helping me at least make sense of what's happening now, and also how things are likely to continue going forward. So this Jupiter new moon, you could call it, in Cancer, that's looking like a much needed good wave of energy coming in against this backdrop of more fiery, aggressive energy that is going to precipitate some sort of beneficial change for the planet overall. Like, I think it's going to bring about the breaking of like old systems that need to go away, but it's going to cause a lot of pain in the process. We hope it doesn't cause any more pain. Not trying to manifest anything, but we're seeing what's happened already. So prayers to everyone affected by that. Wanted to mention that. I've had two super thanks come in. Just want to show them really quick. From James, big supporter. Thank you so much. Stefan the GOAT. Well, James, you are the GOAT as well. And the greatest of all time. And also one just came in from Chantal. Love your channel. Your videos are great. Thank you for your clear explanations. I do the best I can. So thank you so much, both of you, for your very generous super thanks. And let's just look one more time. Let's close out with this plasma filament, which is looking like it's about to go because it's pretty wild. And let's see where that's going to go as it relates to the planetary geometry. Because this is really getting active right here. And if that does launch, it's going to launch out and activate this planetary geometry I've been talking about. So let's get into that. And yeah, I mean, that's wild. So let me pull up our solar system scope application. And we also just have a new super thanks that came in. This is from Zukon. In early May, you showed us a paper in the Journal of Geodynamics that assess the planet's position as a precursor to earthquakes using AI. Have you reviewed the paper yet, and was it useful? Can you dumb it down for us noobs in a video sometime? Yeah, I haven't read that paper yet. There's been some others that have caught my interest more, but I'll make sure I get back to that one. And yeah, once I read papers, I incorporate them in my videos. So long as you keep watching, you'll get the download, I'm sure. So thank you, Zukon, for the very generous super thanks and for the reminder of that. Welcome to the solar system, folks. We are part of it. We are not separate from it, though sometimes we think we are when we're laying on our couch, eating chips, watching Netflix. But we are a part of the solar system, whether you want to be or not. But look at our position right now. Here's the Earth, here's the Sun. These angles are accurate, as are the scale distances between the planets. But if we zoom out to that square position, what do we get? We get Saturn and Neptune over there. And this is actually that alignment I'm talking about. It takes time for things to move through interplanetary space. So if we go forward here and we just zoom forward to around the 25th, let's say, we've been talking about that new moon, we see this alignment forming really nicely between Mars, Mercury, Venus, Ceres, Saturn, and Neptune. If I tilt it there, you can see that a little better. And then if I go even all the way to the 30th of June, that's when it really, I think, has the best alignment between all the points. It's not exact. It's not a perfect line, but it's pretty dang good. So that is some of the critical planetary geometry we have coming up end of the month, but it really clicks into place around June 21st, right here. And then continues all the way through this new moon and Jupiter Cazimi right here. We see our, if we zoom forward a bit, see our moon right there. Oh, see that moon right there, and that new moon position going like this. So yeah, critical planetary geometry for the second half of June, and I expect there to be some significant solar activity as a result of that. And we do have this big sunspot group now, new flux pushing out, just like I said we kind of would need for this to occur. Look at that growth. That could, and it's been pumping already before this occurred. It had already been launching coronal mass ejections out into space for like 3, 4, 5 days in a row, just non-stop spitting fire. So it's cooled off a bit. Perhaps it's finally building up something to then launch it more from this zone there. That high-speed stream will be active. It could charge through interplanetary space pretty quick and hit us right around that critical planetary geometry window, the first one. Then we kind of have that extend out till the end of the month. So that is your update for today. Thank you all so much for watching. Again, I've been your host, Stefan Burns. If you'd like to help support the channel, then smash that like button. Subscribe if you're not already. I release videos almost daily. If you'd like to more directly support the channel and also allow me to help you, like mutual support you could say, then you can go to my website, wildfreeorganic.com. For example, we have the Spirituality Herbal Tea Blend. This is purple lotus flower, chamomile, mugwort, and passion flower. Really great at helping you to rest, relax, sleep, just feel more embodied and pleasurable. Enhances your dreams. Great for like yoga and meditation. Activates your parasympathetic nervous system. Really good stuff. People rave about it. USA only for the tea blends, but international, we have earthing shoes available. These are the women's, and these are the best earthing shoes that you can buy. All leather construction. The bottom is water buffalo. We have the copper plug at the K1 Meridian. We have a hemp stitching here, so it's super durable. And they are 0 heel drop and a wide toe box, pretty wide toe box. So these are some of the best earthing shoes. There's also boots and sandals available. So you can get those on the website, wildfreeorganic.com. And I've basically, I make this stuff because I got into herbalism a few years ago. I was already making these tea blends for myself. A lot of people were commenting on the channel, talking about how solar activity was affecting them and geomagnetic disturbances. And I figured may as well, like, because I have the audience, may as well make the products and offer them out to people, because it's hard to find high quality stuff now. Everything you get in a store is basically garbage. I bought some strawberries from an Amish market a couple days ago because it's strawberry season, right? We just had the strawberry full moon. And you know, they're like normal strawberries you pull out of your own garden. They had some flavors to them that were literally mind-blowing, almost like it was injected with some sort of artificial flavor. But the Amish are not doing that. You can trust the Amish, right? They're the best. So these strawberries have so much flavor because they're grown in good soil And it's, not just soil that was remediated in the past 2 years to be organic, but like organic biodynamic for probably centuries, knowing the Amish, right? And it was mind blowing. And those strawberries probably had like 5 to 10 times more nutrients than store-bought strawberries, which are big and bloated and kind of flavorless. It's all just like water and chemicals, like like the pesticide and fertilizer chemicals. Same thing with tea blend in the store. So this stuff is really good, high quality, all organic herbal teas. I mix them together, keep it loose leaf. I don't shred them up and just use the powder that results. And these shoes are handmade to order in Turkey by my friends there who I've visited a couple times now. They are awesome. And so yeah, the highest quality ingredients, quality is no mistake. wildfreeorganic.com/store. Thank you all so much for watching. I'll be back with more videos as this space weather continues, and perhaps some significant geophysical geologic events. I keep track of the Schumann resonances. There are some weird things kind of happening there, so I may have to do an update on that. But in general, there's a little bit of a quiet period right now before this high-speed stream hits us. So enjoy it while you can. Make sure you get outside, do some grounding, enjoy the outdoors if you can, and wishing all of you well. Thank you so much, and I'll see you all in the next video.